Okay, so I'm just doing this live stream kind of in lieu of a Skype video I was going to do with a friend. She had to cancel, so this is kind of in lieu of that. I'm online anyway, so I thought I'll just do a live stream. See how this goes. As always, you know, the way I always approach these live streams is very much from interaction with my subscribers. People ask questions, ask my views on things, interact. I enjoy live streams mostly, so see how it goes. If it's a little bit dead, if no one's online, then I'll round it up. The battery isn't very high, so I'm not going to make this one too long. Maybe half an hour, 40 minutes. Some of my live streams have gotten to an hour and a half. I don't think it's going to be that long because the battery isn't very. Yeah. Okay, we'll see how it goes. No one so far, so I'm talking to myself. See how it goes. Some of my regular subscribers know how this works. Just leave comments, and I'll try and interact with comments. Meanwhile, while I'm waiting for any sort of responses, I'm just going to read because may as well multitask. I've got a backlog here actually. This is the Sunday Times from the Queen's funeral. It's about a week ago. Let's see, the September 11th, actually, over a week ago. So I've got a backlog of to read all of these. Still, no one's logged in. I'm going to multitask here. Let's see. So, people, if you log in, please just say hello so I know you're there. So I can interact. When that comes up with one person, I don't know if that's me or if it's someone else. If the one person is actually me. Of poignant newspaper covers here of Her Majesty's coffin going to its final resting place. I'll maybe give this 5 minutes. If there's no interaction, then, well, there's no interaction. Most live streams after a few minutes do get into something, so 3 minutes now. It's a little bit longer than usual. I don't know if people can see this like after it's recorded. I'm not quite sure if it works that way. But just for the record, I forget what I was going to say. I think realistically, I'll have to bring it up to about the 5 minute mark. Right, while I'm waiting for people, I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to mess around with my phone. I could read a newspaper, but it's maybe more efficient to just mess around with my phone. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if when this is recorded, if people could see the like just what they interact with, or if they could see the whole video. I don't know how that works. If it's like if people can watch a pre-recorded live stream, don't know. phone's only at 50%. Hmm. Still talking to myself here. It's a little bit unusual. Usually by this point I would have had one person. If people do miss this, don't worry, I'll be doing these periodically. Um I don't think I've disabled comments. Let me just check that that's an issue. Live chat, all messages are visible. Yeah, so that's not the issue. Participants, pop-up chat. Hmm. Hi Declan, welcome. You're the first person. It's been 6 minutes. You're the first person. I'm okay, thanks. I'm a little bit lethargic because my sleeping structure is not great. So even though I haven't really done much today, I'm yawning already, which is not good. But otherwise, I'm okay. Can't complain too much. How are you? Do you ever work on Sundays, Declan? Is there ever any work at the store on Sundays? If it's just us, Declan, I hope you'll excuse me if I round it up fairly soon because, I don't mind talking to you, but it's better with a live stream to get sort of a multiple situation going on. By the way, if you don't mind me asking, Declan, just so we'll have something to talk about to keep something rolling, has anything happened with your court case? I mean, with those who assaulted you, is that coming up, or have you been given any more information about that? And again, shame about sleeping issues. Yeah, it's just I've struggled with something called delayed sleep phase syndrome for years now. It's to be honest, it's never been formally diagnosed. I haven't got medication for it. Because with medication, you have to be a bit wary that you get addicted to things, and but it just means that my mind is very, very active at night time. My friend always comes around on Saturday, and he stays late, so he left about 5 a.m. I kind of feel burned out, but I shouldn't be. I haven't done anything today. Someone else just dropped by there and they've left again. So, um, yeah, it's not fun. I mean, the sleeping problem. It's not insomnia. When I'm tired, I can sleep more or less, but it's just kind of like it's only 5:30 and I'm feeling tired, and I shouldn't be because I slept. I slept in. It's Sunday, so although to be honest, my days tend to run into one another. Yeah, Declan, I'll see how this goes. To be honest, because really, it's I find when there's a lot more engagement, it's better. No disrespect to yourself, but it's just ideally a live stream should have a lot of people. There's been a hearing, but no plea. So waiting for further updates. So if not guilty, it will go to trial the end of October. It seems a lot of cases are going to October because we've had high profile cases here, even worse than what you went through. I mean, murder cases, and they all October seems to be everything seems to be being pushed to that month. So it seems there's going to be a big backlog. I just read something really troubling, and this is not to put you off, but something really troubling in the Daily Mail that in some forces the police are only recording 1 in 21 cases. It's a flipping disgrace. I mean, 1 in 21 crimes even being recorded. In your case, at least they recorded it. I guess it depends on whether that couple actually plead guilty or not. If they plead guilty, it'll save a lot of time, I imagine, because you won't have to testify. But if they're claiming they're innocent, unfortunately, you may have to appear as a witness. I don't know, but I hope they give you support to that end, if that's the case. How do you feel, Declan, if you have to go to court? Do you think you'll be anxious about that, or have they given you any sort of idea of what to expect if that happens. I've never actually been in the court of law. I've never done jury service. I've never. I had a friend actually, and she was raped. Um, and in the end, the guy admitted it, so thankfully she didn't have to testify. But I was prepared to go as a sort of not as a witness because I didn't see what happened, but just as moral support for her. She was Chinese, and what had happened was she was sort of put in this accommodation. It was a bit dubious, and I think it was an Iranian guy. Yeah, he raped her basically. I don't know if it got the whole way, but it was quite a traumatic experience. And but in the end, he admitted it because what they done, this particularly dubious landlord, just basically threw all the foreign nationals together. I have a feeling they will plead guilty as there's evidence they done the same to others. But yeah, quite nervous about going to court. Probably their lawyers will be telling them plead guilty and you'll get a lesser sentence, which rightly or wrongly is the strategy their lawyers will use. Yeah, I totally understand that, Declan, having to, see them there. Um, but hopefully you'll be given some preparation for that, and they'll tell you exactly. I can't tell you myself. I've never been in a court of law, but I imagine they'll be giving you some information about that. Will that be in Norwich, by the way, or somewhere else? I see two people now, so if anyone else has joined, feel welcome to say hello, and we'll get a subject going, or feel free to ask me questions. Incidentally, just I'm saying this in passing. Um, you may know him, Declan, and yeah, there's a guy called Gary Garner's Goy Pride. That guy, he's a total troll. I've just made a video about how I deal with trolling on this channel. I don't know if he'll show up to this one. Yeah, I'll be in Norwich. Just hope to get justice. I hope so. I hope so. But to be honest, mate, I mean, the way things are right now, they're probably not going to get a custodial sentence. I imagine they'll have to pay some sort of financial penalty to you, which I know that isn't really compensation for assault, but I'd imagine it'll be something like that. They'll probably look at what the work status is, if they're unemployed or if they're homeless or whatever. Then it'll probably depend on what they can afford. Maybe community service or something, but I wouldn't expect a custodial sentence. And I know that's it's a bit shitty. I want the buggers to be put behind bars myself, but the way it is nowadays, judges are probably trying to avoid that. So I guess if you just anticipate that, it'll be easier to handle when you hear the sentence. Um, but I guess something's better than nothing. Yeah, it terrifies me them getting released as I do walk to work a lot. I would mention that, by the way. I don't know if there's sort of officers are keeping you updated with this, or if there's someone in liaison with you. But I would definitely mention that you fear possible reprisals, or if these people are acquitted. If um, have you had any threats actually since this happened, or is that just like is it just something you feel might happen? Because I would definitely mention it because that could be seen as an aggravating factor if you fear that there'd be any sort of reprisals from them. For example, if they're acquitted, if they get back to you, um, or maybe their friends or something like that. I would definitely mention it because that could be seen as an aggravating factor in the case. For example, if they show real remorse, if they apologize to you, if they show real remorse, that would be one thing. But if they don't, it might suggest, and I don't want to alarm you here, but I want to be very careful what I say. But I don't blame you for that. When I lived like 20 years ago, when I lived in a rough part of my city, I was assaulted by a guy. The police at the time put it down the wrong place at the wrong time, and maybe it was true. Maybe he'd had an argument with someone who just took it out on me. I mean, literally, I was walking along the street. There wasn't even a fight. There was nothing. It was just next minute I know I've just been punched. Like, it didn't break my jaw, but it was kind of, on very uncomfortable and uneven for a while. I couldn't quite close my mouth properly. He hadn't fully broken it, but, it was quite a punch he gave me, and it it wasn't so much painful, it was just the shock of it. The shock of it that this stranger could just, for no reason, I mean, he didn't ask for money, he just saw me, and it was this menacing look, and the next minute, there was nothing. He didn't even say anything. Crazy. No, no threats or anything, but worried they will do it again or worse. And of course, they could do it to someone else if they're acquitted. I just hope you have a half decent judge because, yeah, some of the judges in this country are useless, utterly useless. Like that judge at Wood Street Court in London recently acquitted a woman who basically murdered a baby, and she was acquitted. Well, not no, she wasn't acquitted. I shouldn't say that, but she was given a suspended sentence, no custodial sentence, a suspended sentence, on the grounds that she was going to college. I mean, the justice system is it, it's a disgrace. Yeah, what actually happened at the time? I mean, I did report it. I think Northumbria police are not the worst. There's other police forces who are more incompetent, but they took the statement and they gave me some information, and they told me if I ever saw them in around to contact them. Actually, I guess they wanted it for information or to make an arrest or something. I can't recall what actually happened. Tomu, welcome. Hey Nathan, you're right. Just been watching for 5 minutes in the shadows. If you don't mind asking, is that your jaw looked odd in your earlier videos? No, no. What I'm talking about happened 20 years ago, like long before I started YouTube. That was back in 2001, 2002. I'm guessing my jaw looked odd, maybe because of the quality of the video. And I'm just unlucky. I can never seem to get a good thumbnail picture. I'm always pulling some strange face, or it's one thing I don't like about this channel. No matter what, I try to kind of just look normal, but for some reason, the thumbnails always capture me in a non-flattering light. You know, they usually give you a little choice of free thumbnails, and I try to go for the most normal looking one, but that will be it. It's probably the low quality of the camera. Um, but no, that incident happened long before I even began YouTube, and when we're talking 20 years ago now, so it's a long time ago. But it never, it definitely had an influence on my thoughts on law and justice, law and order. Wish judges were much harsher and throws book at people like them. Absolutely, Declan. I mean, I think judges live in a bubble. This is my own opinion. You know, people say, well, they're only following guidelines. Yes and no. It's true that they have guidelines that they can't go beyond, but more often than not, they will go for the lower scale of the guidelines. And I mean, in that case, I mentioned the woman who killed her baby. The maximum penalty available for that's life in prison. She got a suspended sentence of 2 years. So clearly, that judge, for whatever bizarre reason, even though this woman has a temper problem, even though caseworkers had expressed concern at her personality, he suspended the sentence. Why? Because she wants to go to college. She wants to do some degree. It's basically, if a criminal has ambitions, they're going to be rewarded for it. That's perverse. It really pissed me off when I read that one. All right, haha. It was probably the warp of the early camera. Yeah, I remember at that time I was using another laptop. I'm not saying this one's perfect, but it's a better laptop. Probably a better camera. I think some of my older videos. I mean, I think I look different. I think I look a bit thinner in those videos, some of them. Um, to be honest, I've always made videos quite spontaneous, so I don't go out of my way in terms of presentation style. I don't. I mean, ideally, if I was viral, right? If I was getting thousands of views, I'd probably have a shave. I'd probably, I don't know, I'd probably take that side of it more seriously. But in terms of the content, yeah. Aaron, welcome. I wonder if the reason they go for lower sentences is due to a fear of judgments being overturned on appeal. Um, that's an interesting point. I imagine there's all sorts of things that go on in the system that, to be fair, maybe we don't know about without being in the court of law. But that's an interesting point. Um, if they go for lower sentences due to a fear of judgments being overturned on appeal, I'm just getting my head around that. I guess it would be like it's better to have a guilty verdict and give them some punishment rather than. Is that what you mean, Aaron? Sorry, I don't follow 100% due to fear of judgments being overturned on appeal. Just get my head around that. Could be something in that, yeah. It's interesting, the Thatchers, Margaret Thatcher supported the death penalty. She, of course, never managed to bring it back in her tenure. Dennis Thatcher was against it on the grounds, but it wasn't on humane grounds. The reason Dennis Thatcher opposed the death penalty is because he made the interesting point that a jury would actually be frightened of sending someone to the gallows, the conscience of that, sending someone to the gallows, so they could actually find someone innocent who was actually guilty. So paradoxically, he argued that the existence of the death penalty could actually get the guilty off the hook because juries wouldn't want it on their conscience that they'd sent someone to the gallows. That's an interesting idea. Um, I've another theory, and this is just a theory. I can't really prove it. That judges sometimes go for softer sentences because prisons are overcrowded. We have the biggest prison population in Europe, 85,000. Many of our prisons are overcrowded. Now, I believe the answer is to build more prisons. I don't agree with this notion, oh, let's send fewer bad people to prison. I think the answer is build more prisons. Of course, it will be money. Of course, it will be. It's never a popular idea to open a new prison. Wherever it's open, locals will not be happy about it. But I think it should be taken seriously because it will ease pressure on the system. Therefore, it will ease pressure on staff, which means easing pressure on inmates, which means less chance of trouble breaking out in prisons. There was a riot at Winson Green in Birmingham a few years ago. Yeah, I don't support the death penalty either, Declan. I should say that. Um, but this is the thing, some conservatives say we need to bring back the death penalty. Actually, that's not necessary. All we need is tougher sentencing. They've been in power now for 12 years. Dominic Raab, as Justice Secretary, done some good things, some welcome things. See, for example, give victims a bigger voice at parole hearings. That's a good thing, and I definitely welcome it. I also welcome more transparency in court proceedings. So, for example, televised verdicts. That's good. I mean, it won't change the actual sentences, but at least it's more transparency. One thing I have long felt that really, really needs to change. Sorry, Aaron, I'll come to your comment in a second. One thing I really, really feel needs to change is I feel very strongly judges need to be more accountable. They say, oh, we're only following guidelines, but you try complaining about a judge. I mean, it's a minefield because the only way to do it is to write to that court of law, the particular court in question. They never have email addresses, so it's not like an MP where you can correspond that way. Um, Judges have no personal contact information, none, pretty much. So how are they accountable to the public? So if the public feel that a judge is disproportionately issuing lenient sentences over and over again, what recourse does the public have? Anyone can write. This is how it works. Anyone can write to the Attorney General. I'm not sure who that is at the moment. It was Suella Braverman, who's now the Home Secretary. But they can write to the Attorney General, who in turn can refer the case to the Court of Appeal and say, well, this has been too lenient. But I was given information about this from Mold Crown Court because I complained about one of the judges in their circuit. And they sent back information about the number of cases that are actually referred to the Court of Appeal and overturned, or the decision is seen to be unduly lenient. And it was microscopic. It was like 5% of the cases that were even referred there. So I think people can rightly ask, what empowerment does the public have? It's infuriating Judges are in a position of power, yet what power does the public have? And guys, I'm going to move this to the next room because the battery's running low, but I want to continue this conversation. Okay, I'm using both hands here. Aaron, I meant the judges worry that they might gain a reputation for being unreliable, as well as trying to ensure that people are punished instead of escaping on appeal. All right, that's interesting. There may be some of that going on. Yeah, that may be a factor. But I personally think, given the statements that some judges make, I mean their own statements, I think there is a culture of leniency in the legal establishment. I believe that there is actually a culture of leniency going on here. I can't prove it, but I'm basing that on the statements judges themselves make. For example, when they place an offender's ambitions ahead of the gravity of their offence. And that case where the woman killed her child. Um, but that's a good point regarding the appeal situation, that judges might actually not want judges in terms of their verdicts, because if it was overturned on appeal, then they would be seen as incompetent. Is that what you're driving at? As well as trying to ensure that people are punished instead of escaping on appeal. This is the thing. I mean, to be clear, my contentions with the justice system isn't just based on judges. I put a lot of blame on the sentencing council. They are the people who issue sentencing guidelines, so a lot of it has to go to them. Oh, we've went down to one person. I hope that isn't because I moved room. That was just a temporary thing, guys. Free again. It goes up and down. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think there's multiple things at play here. The sentencing council are the people who issue sentencing guidelines. Now, none of them are elected. They're made up of, I assume, lawyers and legal experts. But I do think they're massively out of touch. I've had some exchanges with them back and forth. I recently wrote to the Ministry of Justice asking about the situation of young offenders. And this is a classic example of the sort of mixed messaging that the legal establishment sends out. In England and Wales, the age for criminal responsibility is 10. Now, whether that's too young or whatever, that's what it is. Yeah, they were referring to 16-year-old thugs as children, so it's mixed messaging. Um, and they gave me quite a long reply, but there was a lot of obfuscation, and I just felt it was a bit evasive and a little bit tone deaf. It's a problem that a lot of people in the legal establishment make. They use legal jargon that without really grasping that there is actually a lot of public anger out there. Put simply, I think I can confidently say that the majority of the British public simply feel that sentencing is too soft. So to get back to your point, Aaron, that judges are issuing these sentences because it's better than that there's some penalty. Well, maybe then the issue is, to what extent are judges relying on the sentencing council versus their own discretion? I definitely think the sentencing council has questions to answer, namely, why is their guidelines so lenient in so many cases? They talk about public consultation. Most crimes don't have public consultation. They consult on some things, not nearly enough. If I had the power to do it, what I would change, I would definitely make the system a lot more transparent to the wider public. By which I mean, I'm not talking about having every single trial this big circus where the public get to know every single nuance, but I do think the public should be far more empowered in terms of holding judges to account, because I think it seriously damages trust in the system when you have this situation where no matter how many serious crimes there are, or rather, no matter how serious a crime is, you still get leniency that people just find baffling. Um, it seems like the aggravating factors have been ignored. But what you've said there, Aaron, I must admit I had given much thought to that. And maybe it's worth considering more, that there are factors like that at play. I suspect there's a lot of things going on. Declan, if you don't mind, when your case concludes, I'd be very interested in what happened, what the sentence was, how you felt as a victim of crime, and so on. Because I've long felt that if I had the means to do so, I want to be some sort of, I want to do something, whether it's setting up a lobby group or campaigning in some capacity, because this is something I feel very, very strongly about. Admittedly, I'm not a legal expert and I probably need to do a bit more homework myself. But yeah, thank you, Declan. I appreciate that because if I was to do something like this, absolutely, I'd need victim testimonies. I'd need to do interviews and um, you know what, Declan? I'm going to say this rather spontaneously, and I don't want to give the impression. I hope you don't mind me asking this here in the live stream, and I don't want to give the impression this is set in stone. But as a journalist, I'm always looking for, or I will always be looking for potential interviewees. So if I decided to do a story that's connected to the subject, do you think you'd be willing to maybe I suppose you'd have to be careful before the trial. This would be some things that you might not be allowed to say. But further down the line, just so I know, would you be willing to maybe do an interview as a victim of crime? Can I just ask that? I'm not setting anything in stone now. I'm not planning anything now. I just want to know if you would maybe be open to something like that. It would be like via Skype or something like that. Because the thing is, as a journalist, you need to do research. You need to get potential interviewee subjects for various different whatever my assignment is. So I need to be proactive in asking people. Basically, I hope it's not inappropriate in this live stream, and that was very spontaneous. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Might be nervous at first. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Maybe it wouldn't be possible now before the trial, but maybe when the trial's concluded, I could maybe think about something like that, like your perspective as a victim of crime, how you felt about the sentence, how you felt about the process. It might be better after the trial because at the moment, doing an interview to a journalist might be seen as prejudicing the trial. I don't know, so I'd have to be careful of the legalities of that. But yeah, after the trial, absolutely. I just wanted to mention it in passing so that you're not taken off guard if I did ask you about that. And I'm not saying anything here now, by the way. I'm not planning anything. It might not go ahead. I might have other assignments, but I just wanted to give you a heads up and advance notice that maybe that would be something in the future. Um, and likewise, I would always be looking for interviewees of could be anything. So if you other guys have background in a particular area, and I was covering that as an assignment, you know, if you were willing to go on camera in potential interviews on whatever the subject might be, it might be, for example, that you have a particular expertise or background, and I needed someone with that information. But I'm not planning anything right now. I really don't know what I'm going to do to start off in my career as a journalist because I haven't started yet. So I just need to be proactive. Um, right. So, yeah, I just think the system needs a lot more transparency. We're never going to get it perfect. That I think it would be impossible, but there's a lot of things that need to change. Policing culture needs to change. I read earlier that 1 in 21 cases, I mean, are even recorded. That's a disgrace. I mean, it won't give much confidence to victims of crime. Um, and sentencing needs to be tougher. People just don't feel that the sentencing reflects the gravity of crimes. But anyway, let's see. The Sentencing Council probably doesn't want public consultation on a wider array of sentences as they know what the public would want and they're opposed to it. Absolutely. That's what I feel, and it just shows they're just tone deaf. To be honest, I don't have much time for them. I mean, when I've corresponded with them, they've always been polite and professional, but I do think they're out of touch. I just think they're tone deaf. And the website is very comprehensive. It explains all why they do what they do, but it's also quite self-congratulatory. They've actually got a section on the website saying myths about sentencing, and it's rather patronizing. It's like, oh well, the public, their attitude is sort of along the lines of the public is misinformed by tabloid sensationalism. But the public are not stupid, and the public sees sentencing for what it is. Um, so I don't have much time for them. And the fact that they're unelected, they're basically unaccountable. They don't have to respond to me. Um, I mean, the point I would make is people complain about politicians, but we can vote politicians out of office ultimately. These bureaucrats at the sentencing council, what can we do about them? They're the people. I mean, when you think about it, it's a lot of power because they're the people really deciding what a sentence should be. And I know it's not an easy thing. I'm not saying that there's going to be an exact right answer, but the general public consensus is it's too soft. Now, they do not correspond with that. They, in that sense, they are massively out of touch. You definitely have so much potential in your journalism. Oh, thank you, Declan. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I mean, I've always felt that way because I have an interest in pretty much everything. And that's a good thing for a journalist, that naturally inquisitive mindset. Um, I actually took journalism at university, so this feels like going full circle, but I didn't graduate because it wasn't what I expected. That particular course wasn't what I expected. And as I previously mentioned, I had personal problems. I had something akin to a nervous breakdown. So what I done is in 2020, late 2020, I took this course in the British College of Journalism. I have to say they were very good, very professional. I had a lady who was she was an editor actually of one of Britain's main women's magazines. I forget her name now, but she was my tutor basically. And this was someone with a lot of experience and very useful feedback. So I graduated last year. I got the certificate. I have a press pass. I basically am a qualified journalist. I just haven't started yet because I've been distracted by so many other things, the world of online dating and a host of other things. But I really do feel now is the time I need to get something done. I don't know what it will be, but I want to do something. You're very articulate and got a lot of knowledge, so I'll definitely support you with an interview if necessary, just after my trial, though. I really appreciate that, Declan. Thanks a lot, mate. I appreciate those kind words. And I try. What I need, I think the skill I need to master is patience because I'm very opinionated. And the thing is, as a journalist, to get to the sort of level where I'd be the sort of journalist voicing my opinions, that is an op-ed. I mean, that's something every journalist wants to do, but realistically, I'd probably start off having to just have the standard reports, in which case I have to take my own opinion out of it and just report the facts. And I can do that. I could definitely do that, but I think I'll need a degree of patience at 37 to not want to do the op-eds because I need to kind of earn my salt, so to speak. Trial will be the 31st of October, Halloween. Hmm. That's a long wait, Declan. I just hope you get a bit of a break in that time and you're not racked by anxiety. Try and do things that you enjoy. Try to just remember they're the ones, they're the ones who are going to be facing their fate, one way or the other. At least they've been caught. That's something. I mean, it's not like at least this didn't happen late at night and they weren't caught on camera and it was, at least the process is in swing now, so it could be worse. They could have just totally escaped even being caught. So that's something. That is something. So even if they get a light sentence, at least, if nothing else, hopefully, and I know this might be naive on my part, hopefully the process itself will put them off doing this again. Because, this all this time, they're going to be thinking, what's my sentence going to be? And maybe that will make them think twice, was it worth it? Assaulting this stranger for no reason. One can hope. One can hope. Um, I try not to think about it too much, but for some reason got Henry Hoover's stuck in my head. Probably because Bot Grandad won. Henry Hoover. Sorry, I'm not with you. That's a sorry, Declan. I didn't quite get that. Got Henry Hoover stuck in my head. I know there was a Hoover brand called. I'm sorry. I don't follow what you're referring to there. But yeah, definitely. I know it's easier said than done because I remember if this helps in any way, me and a group of friends were assaulted in Wolverhampton city centre, just off the ring road. If anyone's been to Wolverhampton, it could be quite a rough town, city. Anyway, what happened was the guys who assaulted us, they were high at the time, so thankfully they didn't do much damage. But I went to the police station, reported it, and it actually turned quite complicated because the officer involved was a cheeky git. I mean, he wasn't sympathetic, he was rude to me, and I basically got quite angry. I thought, wait a second, I'm a victim of crime. Yeah, you should be showing some sympathy. I ended up making a formal complaint, and that, of course, was a whole other process. Um, I mean, it's the thing is for victims of crime, police are the first port of call. Actually, Declan, can I ask just in passing, how have you found the police? Have they been, I guess it's Norfolk Constabulary. I don't know if they're shared with Suffolk or not, but have they been sympathetic? Have you found the police themselves? I mean, forget the sentencing for a second, but have you found the police themselves? Have they listened to you? Have they been understanding? Or have you found them a bit dismissive, or how have you found that side of it? And I apologize, I might ask these questions again in the interview. Some police officers are terrible, but the ones for me were very good and sympathetic. That's good. It's good to hear. Because the thing is, as a victim of crime, I mean, the thing is, the police deal with this all the time, but they need to remember a victim of crime, in all likelihood, doesn't. So, you're out there, you're minding your own business, then a stranger assaults you. That's that's a traumatic experience. Even if the physical injury heals quickly, no one should have to put up with that. And it's naturally it creates anxiety because you think, could it happen again? I don't think it will, Declan. I think you just got very unlucky. It seems this couple were, um, you were unlucky that it was a case of would have been someone else if they'd been in their sights. And that's obviously no excuse, but I don't think it'll happen again. The last time I was a victim of crime in any context was when my bike was stolen 5 years ago. I reported it, of course. The woman in the station said, "Oh, actually, it'll probably turn up," and I'm not sure she was trained just to be optimistic. Of course, it didn't. The officers didn't turn up to midnight, and I reported it around lunchtime. But cases like that now, it doesn't bode well that most of the time. I mean, the police say people should report these things, but often they're not even followed up. Apparently, in shops, if shoplifters steal something that's less than £50, the police won't even do anything. That's it's not a good state to be in. So this is why a lot of this comes down to sentencing. Where's the deterrent? I've always been interested in the broken window policy. That is to say, when William Bratton was New York City's police commissioner, he was put in charge by Rudy Giuliani. Now, I'm not a big fan of Giuliani now. He's become a yes man for Trump. But he was quite an effective mayor in the sense that on his mayoralty, crime rates in New York City plunged. It became one of North America's most dangerous cities to becoming one of North America's safest big cities, although it's on the rise again now. But there was a period New York City greatly improved, and that came down to the broken window policy, or that was at least was one of the theories. And this was the idea that if the police crack down on relatively minor crimes, it will kind of scare the big criminals. In other words, if we're going to crack down on, say, someone illegally selling cigarettes or doing something relatively minor, then we're going to be much harder on the big level criminals. it must have had some effect because crime rates in New York City did plunge in that period. Right, spare email. Do you have any opinion on the recent Northern Ireland census results? Republicans and even moderate nationalists have been gloating and have not been magnanimous. There have even been some vandalism. I haven't followed it closely, to be honest. I did see when the King went to Northern Ireland to Stormont, a very surreal image of him meeting Michelle O'Neill of Sinn Féin, and Ian Donaldson and others. I mean, it must have been, before I get to your question, it must have been on a personal level a challenge for the King because he was very close to his uncle, his great uncle, yeah, great uncle Lord Mountbatten, who was, of course, murdered by the IRA. So for him to shake hands with the woman who represents a party that is a political wing of the IRA can't have been easy. But like his mother, he showed great diplomacy. Um, Opinions on it? Well, definitely it seems that the situation in Ulster is changing. I mean, December the 5th, 100 years of Northern Ireland, I'll probably make a video around that time. I must be honest, I don't follow Northern Ireland politics closely. I really don't, because there's so much going on in the world. I mean, I'm from Northern Ireland, but really I have grown up in England. Just turn the light on there. So honestly, I haven't followed it closely, but it does seem that the demographics are changing. And if we're being honest, the Republican nationalist faction has grown. When I was born in 1985, it was something like, I guess, 25% nationalist, 75% unionist, or 70-30, something like that. It's now probably more 50-50, possibly even more of a nationalist fringe, but they certainly shouldn't gloat about it. That would be a mistake. Census figures show a Roman Catholic majority in Northern Ireland, though that could include Polish and other nationalities, so it could be skewed. That's a good point, actually. In Belfast, it's a multicultural city. There's going to be, and as you say, a lot of Poles are Catholics, so it might not necessarily um, be what it seems. But honestly, I don't follow it closely. Any thoughts on the Iran protests? Again, that's one of those issues. I was going to make a video on it. The main thing I would say about that is I don't think it will be a turning point. Unfortunately, I wish I could say it was. For those who don't know, by the way, a young woman was killed in the custody of the so-called morality police, and it's triggered these protests across Iran and Tehran and other cities. Um, I'd like to be optimistic and say it's a turning point, but this has happened before in Iran. There was that young woman, Neda, in the Green Revolution in 2009. Well, it turned out not to be a full revolution. But there was optimism then, like, would her death herald change? What do we have now? The president, Raisi, is known as the Butcher of Tehran. He's a hardliner. Of course, in Iran, the president doesn't have absolute power, it's a supreme leader. Apparently, they have officially condemned her death and they've issued thoughts to her family, but it's their own morality police that are responsible. I mean, they say she died of a heart attack. She was only 29, so it seems, and she had no pre existing conditions. So that seems dubious. Certainly, it's a situation to watch. But unfortunately, in the case of Iran, this has happened before where you've had angry protests. The regime, of course, has staged their own protests, i.e., in favor of the regime. Um, it's just a grim situation. I mean, I have enormous respect for these brave Iranian women, and some men as well who are defying the authorities, much like those Russian dissidents. But I will say this, though, Islamist women in the West who say, "Oh, hijab is my choice." Well, maybe it is your choice, but I remember the Women's March. They had these things like solidarity with hijabi women. That's all very well. I've got a neighbor who's a hijabi, and we get on fine. We're good neighbors, and I wonder what her thoughts were on this would be. But I would simply say to hijabi women, you wear that if you want, that's fine. But if you're saying it's all about choice, then you need to respect the choice of women who choose not to wear it. And the fact is, in Iran, they don't have a choice. So it's a false narrative when hijabi women claim that it's a choice, because in many parts of the world it isn't.
And the fact is, Iran's an Islamic theocracy. So what does that say? So when Western feminists and Islamists, talk about hijab solidarity day, where is their solidarity for these women in Iran who are risking arrest or beatings for removing their hijabs? I was going to actually make a video about that, so I might repeat some of the things I've just said. Let's see. That sounds about right. When I was at Wolverhampton Uni, a friend. Oh yeah, you went to Wolverhampton as well. A friend got her shared house broken into, and it took ages for the police to do anything after reporting it, even with the landlord calling them. Yeah, I have to say my experience with West Midlands police wasn't good. The officer who dealt with our case, I say ours because it was me and some friends, he sounded like someone that he was tired of his job, he couldn't be bothered, and he said, "Ah, just a student complaining." He just had a bad attitude. I mean, to me as a victim of crime, and I didn't like it. They have to remember if they're stressed out, they chose that job. So Northumbria Police is a bit better. When I've had dealings with Northumbria Police, they tend to be of the two forces that I've dealt with personally. That is Northumbria Police and West Midlands Police. Northumbria Police is better, but I say that cautiously. I'm sure there'll be bad officers in this force as well. They always all forces have the bad apples, but these people they choose to be police officers. So if they can't be bothered to deal with victims of crime, then what are they doing wearing a uniform? I just so sometimes people say, "Oh, it's the fault of the government because the Tories made police cuts." That might be part of it. I don't think it explains the whole problem. I do think some of it's in policing culture. I do think some police chiefs have went too woke. What I mean by that is they're too hung up on pronouns and diversity quotas and so on, rather than just plain old policing. Um, and they say, victims of crime need to report these things, but what sort of message does it send out when, you know, maybe it is a case that they're tied up with paperwork? But I'm not sure if it's all the fault of politicians. I think some of this comes down to police and culture. And yeah, Wolverhampton, unfortunately, could be quite a rough town. Certainly was when I was there. It's a pity. Like everywhere, it has its good side. I mean, I remember St Peter's Church, the Lady Wolfram statue there, um, has a great art gallery. I mean, that's the fine Victorian art. I'm trying to say something positive about Wolverhampton. I did live there for 2 years, so I don't want to just trash the place. But yeah, let's be honest, it's quite a rough time. I remember, I don't know if you can relate to this, Aaron, but the big Cineworld complex in Heath Town, where the tar blocks are. I don't know why on earth they decided to put the multiplex cinema there instead of the city centre, which basically means, if you walk there, you had to go through one of the roughest neighbourhoods in Wolverhampton. Because Heath Town is it's a rough place. There were always gangs outside the cinema there, and it has to be said in the West Midlands they tend to be black gangs. Up here they're more white. I'm just saying that as a matter of record. It's just the reality. But yeah. Um, okay, guys, I'm going to round this up quite soon. Let's get 54 minutes. I'll give it another 6 minutes. It's been a good live stream. I thought it was going to be slow today, but it's been good. Sometimes when it comes to the issue of crime, I just feel despair. And I haven't even been a victim of crime myself for years, but it's like an empathetic anger. I feel so, excuse me, sorry for victims of crime, the bureaucracy that they have to go through. And just, I feel a lot can change in the system. And these aren't things that really, it's not even a case of having a radical overhaul, although I think that's probably necessary at this point. But it's a case of just some things can change. Judges can be more accountable. But as you said earlier, I think Aaron, you mentioned this. The sentencing council know damn well that if they had more interaction with the public would give them what for. So they don't. I favour having them headed by a sort of elected representative, something akin to police commissioners, because if they had an elected head, then they could be accountable, i.e., the public could see how well they're doing and decide to elect that person for a second term or not. Why not? It's democracy, and it would definitely be bringing some accountability. I recognize they can't all be elected. You probably need lawyers and legal experts in there, but I really, really think that the system can improve a lot in terms of accountability. To me, that is one of the major, major issues because the public has no faith. Yeah, thanks, Declan. I think it's been a good one. It took a few minutes to start off. By the way, guys, I notice he hasn't turned up today, but I'm not going to name names, but I have a few trolls at the moment. I felt obliged to make a video explaining my stance on this. Now, some people might say, "Oh, why waste your time? It's not worth it." But it's just for the record, because I really, really question the mindset of people who think I'm full of it, and yet they come to my channel. But they have a choice. They have a choice. I'm not forcing them to watch the videos. One guy in my last video said he was disgusted by my opinions and disgusted by me. And this guy, some of you might recognize him. He's been coming to videos a lot recently, so that leaves me with the question: why? Why? Why does he bother? I was warned by a lecturer when I said I was going to the cinema. Don't go alone at night and take taxis there and back. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Heath Town, when I was there, it's a rough place. And I just don't understand why they put the multiplex there rather than the city centre. I suppose the city centre has, I think it was called the Lighthouse, it was the old Chubb factory on the ring road. It had some decent productions and it's a great building. Um, I saw Hotel Rwanda in that cinema in 2004 when it came out. Very powerful film. I saw a Korean film at the Cineworld in Heath Town. But yeah, it was a poor choice of maybe they thought like sticking it there in a housing estate would sort of help to regenerate the area or something like that. I don't know, but it just seemed a strange place to put a cinema. I don't know if Heath Town's still like that. You're in Dudley, Aaron. So have you been in Wolverhampton recently? Imagine Dudley has a few neighbourhoods like that as well. So does Sunderland. So does everywhere. In Sunderland, our main multiplex is in the city centre. So, but for years the city didn't have a cinema. When I first came here in 2000, I think I'm right in saying we were the biggest settlement in the UK without a cinema. Sunderland has 180,000 people, and if you wanted to go to the cinema then, this is 2000 to 2004, we had to go to a place called Bolden, just to the north of here, which has a multiplex, or Newcastle, which has about 4 or 5 cinemas, Newcastle upon Tyne. Um, but yeah, it's a good multiplex. They're still quite rigid about the pandemic thing. They still have a big disclaimer saying, you know, card payment only. We have social distancing. Blah blah blah. They still have that disclaimer up, which is it is what it is. I'm going to see that new film. Don't worry, darling. It looks kind of intriguing. The director Olivia Wilde. I knew a few of her films. She was an actress. She was in Rush, among other things. Um, an interesting cast. Gemma Chan is in it. I liked her role in Humans. It looks quite quirky. So I'll see. I'll see. I just hope it's not an overtly feminist narrative because I know Olivia Wilde's a bit of a feminist and that's fine, but I just hope it's not too much in your face. We'll see. We'll see. But don't worry, darling, or I think that's the name of the film. That's what I'm going to check out next. The last film I saw was that Brad Pitt film, Bullet Train. It was all right. It was a bit over the top, a lot of ultra violence for the sake of violence, ridiculous stunts that wouldn't happen in real life, i.e., if there's been a mass derailment, if everyone comes up unscratched. It was a bit silly, a bit of escapism. Watchable enough. Watchable enough. Uh, Brad Pitt seems to be everywhere these days, cinematically speaking. Okay, I'm at the 1 hour mark. I'm going to wrap this up, people, but it's been a good discussion. I'm going to do these live streams periodically. As for the trolls that I mentioned, I'm not going to block them just yet, but if they keep up the behavior, I have no choice. And just for the record, if they claim I'm being censorious or something like that, people can see I've given them a chance. I've let them have their voice. I'm not going to put up with that sort of nonsense on my own channel. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for your support. And yeah, until the next live stream, thank you. Have a good evening.